Okay, so hi everyone. My name is Line. I'm the president of Católica for Future, and I'm also going to be the moderator of this event. And first of all, just wanted to say thank you for everyone that wanted to come, and we're very happy that so many people are interested in this topic. And also thank you to Mr. Antonio Castro from EDP, and Mr. Carlos Costapina from Galp, and Professor Nuno Moreira de Cruz for taking their time to come and talk to us today. We're very happy about that. And also I can see that most of you have your cameras on, which is great. And if everyone else can also put them on, it would be very nice, because then it would feel more like a presential conference, even though it's not. But of course, this is not mandatory. Just a little, it would be nice. So first of all, I'm going to start with going through the agenda for the day. Here you go. So first of all, Professor Nuno Moreira de Cruz is going to open this conference, and he's going to talk a little bit about responsible businesses, which is very related to the topic about sustainability in the energy sector. And at 2:15, we're going to welcome Mr. Antonio Castro from EDP to present his firm and their sustainability measures. And afterwards, we're going to open for questions for all the participants. And here, of course, you can write questions in the chat if you want to, but it's always better if you say them out loud, because yeah, that's nice. I'm just going to give you the option to write it if you don't want to say it out loud. So at 3 p.m. we will have a short break before it's time to welcome Mr. Carlos Costapina from Galp. And here we will do the same procedure again with questions after he finishes his presentation. And then at 4 p.m. The event is over, and we're going to have a short wrap up, and then hopefully everyone will go home happy with a lot of new information and maybe a new perspective on this topic. So yeah, I'm just going to say welcome to Professor Nuno Moreira de Cruz. And now he's going to share his screen.
Great, thank you very much. Let me try to share mine. I only have 2 slides to share with you, but the most important thing to me is, first of all, to thank you for the event. I mean, I think I'm always so happy to see students like you with a lot of passion on this issue like sustainability, because you do this on the top of everything you have to do. And in my daily life with undergrads and master students, it's always a pleasure to see the passion that you have for these issues. Gives me a lot of hope for the generations to come, because my generation, we dedicated our time to spoil the world, so we will have to put it back. Sorry about that, but it's really great to see you. I'm always very, very impressed with the level of energy that you put in these things, and we have a close link in the center with at least 2 or 3 sustainability clubs that are around, and I'm happy for that. I'm also very happy to see that you have managed to join the 2 biggest Portuguese energy companies, which is a great thing. It's not easy to do that, so you should be happy for that. It's a great achievement to have Galp and EDP, and more than Galp and EDP, the people that will be Antonio Castro and Carlos Costapina are really the persons that are able to talk about these things from inside. So I'm very happy for that. My role here today is only, as you requested me, is just sort of set context. I have 2 slides to show to you, sort of setting the context, especially for you students, about how do you position all of these efforts that the companies are doing these days. So bear with me. The first thing to say is that this has been a journey for companies, right? What I call we in the Center for Responsible Business, we call responsible business journey, because it's a journey that the companies have done so far, and you need to understand this to be able to understand where we are today, especially when you are in 20s. It's important to understand that there was life before that, right? And there's a lot of things that were done in the process, and have this historical perspective is very important. The first one is that the company started the journey with philanthropy. That was it. basically when people thought about responsible business was a bit about philanthropy, especially because most of these companies at the beginning was family owned. So philanthropy was in the blood, but philanthropy is not responsible business. Philanthropy is fantastic. Philanthropy is something that certainly the planet needs, but it's just the beginning of the journey. Then you have a second step, which is the risk management, which is understanding that it's the business, stupid. You need to understand this is about the business. I mean, if you take the case Nike, when Nike, it was 10 years ago, it was discovered that they were exploiting children in Bangladesh. They lost 30% of sales, 30% of sales in 3 weeks in the States. So this is about risk management, is about reputation, is about bottom line. Then there was this guy that we have all heard of. He's the guru of strategy, which is Michael Porter, was the first one to talk about shared value as a source of competitive advantage. And Michael Porter created this concept of shared value. Shared value in the sense of from the business model, you have to design it from scratch in a situation where you are clear that you are creating both value for the company and the society. Because if you don't do that, there will be a moment where there is no future for you. He was the sort of guy, the first guy from the strategic point of view to talk about responsible business as a source of competitive advantage, right? And then you have the stage where we are now, which most of the big companies are already there. Those that are the beacons of responsible business, the sustainability, that take purpose very seriously. Those are the companies that are state of the art in this journey, creating this source of competitive advantage. Now, the question then becomes, what is responsible business, right? And it's important that we understand the 4 dimensions of responsible business. We wrote recently in the center a research note where we went very deep into this. We have done a lot of research, and these are the 4 things that we believe make the difference. The first one is to have sustainability in the holistic sense, meaning economic, environment, and social dimension at the center of the business strategies. It's not good enough to be very worried with environment or very worried with social, but then make no money, okay? So you need to be very clear. Sustainably, approaching it from the economic perspective is key, because otherwise there is no preoccupation with social and the environment concerns. But what is more and more true is that if you don't deal seriously with your social dimension and your environmental dimension, you will not be profitable. You will not bring sustainable economy to the equation. So that's the first thing that differentiates a responsible business. The second thing is to have this clear stakeholders interest view. It's not about anymore only about the shareholder. And we need to be very clear about that. The time has passed for companies to believe this is only about optimizing value for shareholders. That doesn't exist anymore. Shareholders are a key stakeholder part, of course it is, but it's not only about them. It's about the whole environment that goes around the companies, the customers, it's the employees, it's the suppliers, it's local communities, it's everything that is around a company. The third one is this clearly understanding that it's about society's well-being. You have to advance that. It's this contribution, the value that you add to society. You have to have that. You have to have that in your DNA. You have to have that in your blood. It's part of the culture. And finally, last but not least, is the whole dimension of purpose, which is these days one of the most used words in corporate world. And it's important to understand what is purpose, which of course I don't have the time to talk about it today, but if you read the research note that maybe I could ask Natalia, if you don't mind, to put in the chat the research note that we just issued. And it's about the purpose, but let me just give you this perspective about purpose, which is very important. If you think about it, if a CEO or a management team don't have something which lies above the stakeholders, they are lost. Because so far for CEOs and management team, it was reasonably easy. It's all about the shareholder. The only thing I have to care is about my shareholder, so I know what to do. Now, if suddenly the world and the society is expecting something much more than that, and is expecting the stakeholders' view, then they get lost. And if they get lost, the easy thing is to go back to their comfortable zone, and their comfortable zone is called shareholder. So you need to have something above the stakeholders' interest, which is purpose. Take the case of Patagonia, the well-known company in the States. The purpose of Patagonia is we are in business to save the planet. So whenever a CEO of Patagonia has to make a decision, should I invest in this case, which have a 15% return, but is going to pollute the river, or this one which is only 10% return but doesn't pollute the river, he knows what he needs to do. And no one will be able to complain about that, not even the shareholder. Shareholder will understand why he took that decision. So that's the reason why purpose is key, paramount in the decision-making process. So that's the thing that we all need to have in perspective. Now, these were the two slides that I had just to put context to the room. In this context, and it's important for you to know, many situations in my classrooms, when I normally ask people, give me a company that you hate, and give me a company that you love. And typically they come with a company that they hate will be an oil company, and the company that they love will be something else, like Unilever or Danone or those things. It's very important that you understand the role of the energy transition. Very important. You can only aspire for oil companies and power companies and natural gas companies to be successful. Because if they fail on doing this energy transition, the world and the planet is in chaos. So the question is the energy transition. Because you cannot live, you need energy to take a shower in the morning, to eat, to go from point A to point B. You need energy everywhere. And the energy that is readily available, sort of still not that expensive, the processes are done, is oil. But the world, the planet is not there for oil anymore. So we just need to hope that this company is being a force for good, are able, because they have the skills, the process, the money to make the change. Some of them have already seen it. I have no doubt that a company like Galp or a company like EDP have seen it. The need to have this energy transition very carefully done. But it's important that they keep track of this. And you, as challengers, as citizens and consumers, you need to keep challenging, because that's the only way that these companies will really be able to be successful in doing the energy transition. That's the challenge of humankind for me today, is the energy transition, and it needs to be done well. Over to you, Lina.
Thank you so much, Professor Nuno. It was a great presentation, and I think it's very relevant, and you talked about all the topics that will be very important for the rest of the event. Apparently we had some problems. You didn't know this, but I just realized that people couldn't see your screen. It was only me and you that saw it. But still, it was a good presentation. So hopefully we'll fix that until it's Mr. Antonio Castro's turn to speak. Mr. Castro, would you like to share the screen yourself, or would you like me to show the slides?
Try to share it. Let's try to see if it.
Yeah, we can try and see. Do you see the?
Are you seeing the first slide?
I'm seeing it. Is everyone else seeing the screen?
Yes.
Sustainability challenges and the energy transition.
Okay,
Yes, we can see.
perfect.
Yeah, it's perfect.
Okay, thank you so much, Mr. Antonio Castro. Welcome to you.
Thank you very much. First of all, I want to thank you for the invitation. It's a pleasure to be here and to share with you if you want, how we position ourselves here in the energy transition. I will briefly first try to explain a little bit what we are, EDP. So we are an integrated electricity company. Just some facts at the beginning. Using EBITDA from 2019, I can tell you that we are 61% of our business is already linked to renewables. 26% is on networks, or what we call regulated activities, and 30% on the client and energy management, where we have still some thermal power plants. I will explain a little bit more in the next slides. EDP today is what we can say. We can say it's an international company. We have operations in 19 countries, and I would say throughout the value chain. The majority of our EBITDA already comes from what we call our company EDP Renewables. 28% is coming from Portugal, 18% from Brazil, and 10% from Spain. Let's say, these are big numbers, but of course, if you needed more detail, it will be a pleasure to share with you. A little, speaking about renewables, EDP Renewables is our growth, if you want, company at this stage. As you can see in this map, it's spread in many countries. Where we are betting more, if you want, today is in the United States. Of course, we have big operations in Portugal, in Spain, I would say in Central Europe. We have a strong partnership with another utility just for wind offshore, where we are developing some projects in the UK, in Scotland, in France, and in the United States. But what's important to say in here is that, as I was telling you, for us, renewable energy coming from renewable sources for us is where we put the majority, if you want, of our money today. We have made a big change in our strategy more than 10 years ago, when we decided that we have to move, if you want, to become a different company, in a sense that we want to provide to, if you want, to our clients, essentially green energy. And why is this? Why is this? Because we believe that the biggest challenge that we face today is climate change. Climate change, as you could see in the right part of the graph, the CO2 emissions are always growing, are still growing, and we have to do something about it. And I think it's a role that belongs to everyone. Of course, I would say the energy companies have a significant role to play in here, because at this stage they are the sector, if you want, the economic sector that generates more CO2. And this was the reason why we, more than 10 years, have decided to change our strategy. Since then, we decided that we were no longer going to build any coal power plants, and we would only, if you want, regarding generation, the part of the generation business, we will only do renewables. And it's important to say, if you look at the left part of the graph, that what's the challenge that we have, and it's enormous, with the current policies, what you could see in the blue, we will never reach, if you want, we'll never reach what we could call it a sustainable world. The problem is not Earth. The problem is people. If we don't tackle this problem, if we don't try to reduce significantly the emissions, I would say the Earth still remains, but probably we will not be able to survive in a planet where temperatures rise, and it will be, at least for the majority of the people, very, very hard to live. The challenge that we have is to reduce significantly this type of emissions. And our role as an energy company, as I've told you, we tackle this and decided to be not part of the problem, but part of the solution. And that's why we have decided to change and to see in our with the sorry, just let me try to connect here my phones.
I hope you're still hearing, to see if we are really part of the solution as we believe we can be. And for this, decarbonization puts a lot of pressure, if you want, in the energy companies. First, regarding renewable generation, as I've told you, EDP nowadays invests something like 1.2, 1.4 billions per year. More than 80% of this Capex goes directly to renewable energy, and the remaining goes to, if you want, what we call the grids. Grids are also essential to allow everyone to have electricity in their homes. But we have another challenge because, as you know, renewable energy is well, regarding wind, can only generate when we have wind, and regarding solar, only on during the day. Fortunately for us, unfortunately, I would say for Portugal, we still have a big percentage, if you want, of hydro. Hydro plays here a significant role because we use it as storage. In a big proportion of our hydropower plants, we have what we call pumping. Pumping is putting the water back in the reservoir. We do this during night, essentially, where the energy is cheap, and so we can keep the water as a substitute of energy, because it is. On the next day, in the morning, we'll generate with the same water again. So it's a kind of storage, and this is the cheapest storage from an economical point of view, if you want, that exists today. Anyway, there's the challenge that we have for the future is to have new types of storage, like batteries. They are starting now, and they will play a significant role in the future. Another thing that we are seeing is that the energy system is no longer in the future be as it is today. Today, what you could see in the majority of the countries is big power plants linked to national networks that link to distribution networks that then are linked to the end user clients. This revolution that is coming is we must have a mix of many things, and one of them for sure is what we call distributed generation. So everyone now, or who can at least, can put a solar panel in the roof and be also a generator, be a consumer and a generator at the same time. This puts a lot of challenge in the systems, especially in the electricity systems, how to manage these flows, because we are used to just go from the central part to the distributed that energy, and in the future, no, it's going to be energy in both directions. So we need a lot of, at the same time, we need new technologies to allow this, not only in grids, but especially in systems, What we call in here smart grids. Essentially, it's grids that can allow that energy can flow in the two ways. We can never forget about energy efficiency. And energy efficiency, I would say, it's the main role, that also one of the main roles that we have, because we shouldn't we should only use what really we need regarding energy. It's a scarce resource, as we all know, and there's a lot of things still to do regarding energy efficiency. The majority have to do with allowing the households to become more efficient in terms of temperature. But But in the future, no. For instance, energy efficiency in the future may mean, for instance, that you should use more electricity in some hours than in the other hours, if we all go as we expect to a much broader expansion of the solar generation.
Sorry, Mr. Castro, sorry to interrupt your presentation, but we had a problem with the Zoom link, and this meeting that was supposed to be done with the Zoom Pro account is going to end in 3 minutes. So we have another link in the chat, and this information is also for everybody to please join the other link. And we are very, very sorry for this mistake that shouldn't be happening. But well, we know that these are the new challenges that we have. So we all please, I am asking everybody to please join the other link and
Okay,
continue
so I'll
with
disconnect
Mr.
and try to connect
Castro's
in the other one.
presentation.
Is that
Yeah,
okay?
that would be great. Thank
Okay.
you. Sorry for the interruption.
Understood?
Yeah, see you there.
You there?
Debt capital markets are changing. We see nowadays significant issues of many companies and are issuing green bonds. I will show you what EDP have done at this stage. But not only green bonds, social bonds also are coming into the market. And this is a major change from what we were seeing 5 to 6 years ago. Today, this type of instruments sometimes are less expensive, if you want, than what we call the brown, for instance, the brown bonds. And why is this? Because the investors are seeing, if you want, a lower risk in this type of instruments. This is good. And if the markets are changing, the capital markets are changing, it's because the mentality of people are changing. As you know, funds, if they are moving this way, is because I would say a significant part of the population now believes also that we have to change, as the professor was saying, we have to change things we were doing. And try to move, if you want, all the companies in the right direction. So I spoke already a little bit about this. So the carbonization for us is crucial. We need a lot of digitization. Downstream is what we call downstream, which is the relationship with clients. It's also changing dramatically. Not only because of, if you want, of the decentralized generation, but also the relationship that we have today and we plan to have in the future with our clients, becoming more service companies. Electrification will be, as I've told you, an issue, especially in transport, but not only there. And another thing at the end, but also very important, is companies must be much more transparent. So the disclosure of information that we have to provide and we should provide. But it's good. Having a transparent information, it's the best way to do business. Let me tell you a little bit about our goals and the way we proceed with this. As many other companies, of course, we have business plans. Business plans have usually they are done for 4 to 5 years. At the time we do the business plan, we decided, of course, what are going to be the main goals, but it's with that business plan that we also decide what are going to be our sustainability goals. We want to have 50% of our customers with value-added services, 100% of our, if you want, grids to be smart, 1 gigawatt hour of distributed renewable capacity in customers. This is very, very challenging, this part. 100% of electric vehicle charging points, 100,000 charging points installed, and of course, 100% of our light duty fleets electrified. So these are examples, if you want, of our goals for 2013 and the path that we are trying to make. One important thing is recognition, and this for us, this slide for me, it's very important because we have submitted our targets, if you want. They are open, as I told you, they are completely disclosed, and we have been recognized that our strategy, or if you want, our strategy have been recognized that is valid for keeping, if you want, the temperature to 1.5. For us, this is what they call the science-based targets. Only a few companies have this today. And for us, EDP, it's very important to have this because it proves to us a way, and that if you want, our strategy is in the right sense. We have been recognized 2 weeks ago, and I think we have disclosure last week when we disclosed the third quarter numbers. Regarding what I've discussed regarding the finance part, EDP was the first Portuguese company to issue green bonds. We have already issued 6. And it's happening very well. I would say from now on, the majority of the bonds that are going to issue, it's going to be green or even loans. This, of course, obliges to do a new type of disclosure where we are going to put our money. But as I've told you, for us, that's not a problem because 80% of our capex it's going to green, completely green areas, and the other part is just for grids, which can also be included in here, even we are not including them for the moment. And also regarding recognition, which is important, of course, we have to submit, if you want, to a lot of these companies or rate, if you want, the companies and look at their sustainability plans and give their opinion. Fortunately for us, regarding the Dow Jones, we have been #1 again last year. We have been at last in the last 10 years, we have been #1, #2, or #3. For us, it's very important because it shows that we are in the right direction. But you can see others like FTSE, Vigeo, Sustainalytics. Fortunately for us, we have good ratings. Ratings, just to answer to these ratings, we have it has a lot of work involved, let me tell you, but I think it's very important. Important not only to show to our shareholders, but to all the stakeholders, if you want. Whenever our EDP Renewables is doing new business, for instance, in Greece or in Peru or in Mexico or in the United States, it's important to show that EDP is quoted as a very sustainable company. So in the relationships that we have with stakeholders like suppliers or future clients, these type of recognitions are important. They're also very important for the company because the type of questions that they usually do, they are not always the same, they change. And every time they become more, they become more accurate, not only accurate, but also more they are following, if you want, also the trends of sustainability. And so this allows us also to improve internally what we should do, and what are the best practices that we should introduce into the company. Well, to do this, of course, we have to adapt, and we are doing a lot of changes in the company, especially for this energy transition. bringing new technologies, bringing new people to work with us. In all the areas, I would say, in all the areas of the company. And Professor talked about purpose. We try to link this with the SDGs. I think you all know about the SDGs. For a company like ours, of course, there are 3 SDGs that we are very linked to. Of course, it's the 7, the 11, and 12. We put the 7 as also as the purpose. The purpose is, our purpose is, we have a kind of wording regarding what we believe it's our role in here. We call it powering sustainable lives. And this, I think, resumes, if you want, what we want to do. We have to give power to people. It's power, as Professor mentioned, is essentially for our life today, all over the world. But we want it to be sustainable, and we want to be sustainable. So we follow, and of course we have also goals to all the SDGs, to these SDGs that we believe that are more linked to our business and where we can make a difference. And essentially, as I've told you, we believe we can make a difference in the first 3 ones. Well, but sustainability to be true, if you want, has to be completely embedded in the operations of the company. I didn't present myself. Apart from my name as Antonio Castro, I'm a general director of EDP. I have 2 areas. I have managing 2 areas. One is risk, and the other is sustainability. But I also always say that who really does the work of sustainability in EDP are, if you want, people that are in the operations. It's not in the corporates that we do sustainability. Who really work on sustainability is the head of a power plant and the managers of power plants and the workers of power plants, or the workers that are doing and installing new grids or a solar panel or whatever. And to embed this, if you want this sustainability, you need policies. And I give you here an example of the policies that we have, that everyone has to follow internally in DDP. And linked to these policies, of course, we have goals, and then we have KPIs linked to them. This is the way that we can, as a professor mentioned, embedded, really. I think it's the right term to sustainability in the day-to-day life of the company. Just to finalize, and then we can go to Q&A, I think, which I think it could be much more interesting than the presentation. Just, of course, we have also the social responsibility. We do close to 26 million of social investment in many countries. The majority is still in Portugal and Spain, but also very much in Brazil. We have a kind of special operations, if you want, in Africa, which is access to energy that is bringing electricity to small villages in the nowhere, with, of course, always with solar and wind. But last year we achieved something like 2,500 people that we could affect. And another thing which is important, we have a volunteers program in the company. And fortunately for us, it's close to 3,000 people that, I wouldn't say every day, but are volunteers, and we try to incentivize people to be very linked to the place they are working with, and with the people around them. And that's for the presentation. I think it's enough. Sorry for the interruption. But I'm ready here for the Q&A. So please, any questions that you have.
Mr. Castro, I have a question. It is in relation with the green finance. You spoke about your company emitting bonds and especially green bonds. And we were able to see that during this coronavirus pandemic, many financial institutions also issued bonds with the objective of investing the funds collected um, into sustainable initiatives, right? And this is a very boost need to make a full transition to sustainability, and specifically what could be the opportunities in the energy sector.
So if you want, yeah, transition needs huge investments, huge real investments, and you need capital to do that. So having a special, if you want, having a special finance directly to these new investments is crucial. This new movement that we have seen, it's very important. As I've told you, we have been following green bonds for several years because we have, if you want, a renewable company for many years, but we have just decided to issue green bonds. I think it is in the slide in 2018. And the reason is when we first saw that the spread they are asking us was lower in a green bond than a brown bond. And this is very, that for us, that was the moment then we decided to start doing this. And as I've told you, this means if the spreads are lower, means that, of course, investors are seeing a lower risk profile in this type of companies. So I think there's a lot of opportunities, and I think this is the type of things that we need for the energy transition. So to accept that a company that is investing in green energy or in sustainable parts of the value chain have a lower risk than other companies that aren't doing that at this stage.
Thank you.
Regarding government subsidies, to what degree do government subsidies play a role in basically use this model, and when do you expect government subsidies not to be necessary anymore?
I don't think, let's say, if you today solar and wind are the most competitive ways of generating electricity at this stage. They don't need subsidies. Of course, what they need is a regulatory framework that allows investors, if you want, to put the money on the right side. And what are investors what need? They want predictability. So the way we believe that we should have is, and to reduce, if you want, to risk and attract more investment to the sector, it's not having, if you want, grants or subsidies. What we need is a regulatory framework that allows us to have a stable and predictable way of selling the energy. What the Portuguese government have done in the last year, issuing auctions for solar, for instance, it's a very good example, the way that for doing this. So government even receive money, or if you want, the system even receive money with these auctions, and so they are not issuing any kind of grants. The only thing they are guaranteeing is that the price is not going to be lower than a certain amount. And this is more than enough, I think. If all the countries do this, I think it will be much more easier, and we will attract much more investors to the energy sector.
Sorry, this of guarantees is also what I meant, it acts as a sort of subsidy, if you will, right?
No, it's not a subsidy, because let's say the spot price today, it's something like 45 to 44 to 50 euros, and these auctions were, if you want, guaranteeing a price of 20. So it's not a subsidy. What they are giving is the opportunity, and the investors are having, if you want, are for the next 10 or 15 years, they know that they can sell their energy at 20 euros. But if they want to sell it at spot prices today, they would raise much more money than they would do it with this type of contracts. But what do we gain? Let's say, what do the investors gain with this? Gain because, of course, cost of capital will decrease, because I know that for the next 15 years, I'm going to sell my energy at a lower price, okay, but it's a guaranteed price.
Okay, thank you very much.
Question, Mr. Castro. Thank you for your presentation. I'm very curious to know what your perspective is about the future, if you ever think that the world is going to become 100% renewable on the energy.
Yes.
Yes?
Yes, I believe.
Okay.
Yes, I believe.
Now
Yes.
continuing my question, how do you think the costs for the consumers are going to change? They're going to be lower. You believe they're going to be lower?
As I've told you, today, if you want to generate electricity, the most competitive technologies that exist are wind and solar, and they are renewable. Okay, so they will cope together with something like 75-80% of the world needs. Then it's remaining 20% that we still don't have, if you want, renewable alternatives apart from the hydropower, if you want. So we need, for instance, batteries, and batteries for the time being are still very expensive. So we are still using, for instance, CCGTs, what we call combined cycle gas turbines, which is a thermal plant that burns gas, natural gas, that generates 1/3, if you want, of the CO2 emissions than a coal power plant. But for the 2015, I believe that batteries will be, if you want, in another stage of development, and and with hydrogen, because hydrogen also can play a role in this type of backup. So for the 20% of time where we don't have wind or solar, that they will play a role. But I really believe that it's achievable, and I really believe that it's going to be cheaper, because the renewables today are very cheap, and they will become very cheaper, even more cheap than they are today.
And do you think that the prices for consumers, they're going to vary within country, or do you think that this is going to become more of like a regulated price for the consumption of energy, depending on the power source, of course?
In the world, it's going to be difficult to have the same price for the consumer itself, because let's say today it's something like 2/3 of what you're paying in your bill is not linked to the generation part of the business. It's linked to the grids, transmission grids, and transmission grids are fixed costs that are diluted by the amount of energy that flows through them. So if you have, from an economical point of view, of course, energy in high density areas could always be cheaper than in rural areas, okay? Just because of you have the transmission and the distribution grids. And of course, if it flows less energy from there, you are diluting those fixed costs for less energy. So the cost per kilowatt hour is going to be higher. So I don't foresee that energy is going to be at the end client at the same price all over the world, but for sure in the long term, at the spot part of the price, the generation part should be reasonable, comparable in all parts of the world. Today in Europe, you could see more or less the same price all over Europe, even if you are not 100% connected with capacity in all the regions of Europe.
Okay, thank you.
I would have another question.
Yeah, please do.
I would like to know, where do you see the biggest challenge or struggle in order to become like completely green, or like in the energy transition? Is it more like government regulations, or is it technology and missing innovation?
Both. One part technology, because if you want for those 20 parts, the 20% that the if you want the green part cannot deliver. So what we call the backup. So we need of course, we are expecting, and really we need this what we for the backup, new type of technologies like batteries or like the hydrogen that is still expensive today. But I believe that in the next 10 to 20 years, these things are going to be at affordable price. Regarding regulation, a lot. As I've mentioned, you need to, if you want to attract investment, you must give this type of predictability to the investors, and in there, governments have a huge play to do. Another thing that I haven't mentioned that is above all of this is CO2 price, because today, as you know, only a few sectors are seeing the CO2 price. You as a consumer are not seeing the CO2 price. When I bought one pen, I really don't know what's the CO2 involved in there. So having a correct value for the CO2 is crucial if you want to decarbonize. And probably, of course, CO2 must be much more expensive than it is today. But that's the only way, if you want really to achieve this, the decarbonization, to give a true value to what you need to not generate, if you want. Okay, so have everyone trying to move to the right direction, because today, not only all the companies or even the consumers are betting, if you want, in the right thing, because they don't have information for that, or the taxation for instance. It's a very good example that you need to do. You need to change. You need to really to readapt, if you want, our tax system to for this energy transition, penalizing who generates CO2 and depenalizing, if you want, who doesn't generate CO2. So that's what I'm hoping for governments to do. Not subsidies, but if you want, regulating the CO2 all over the world, if you want the CO2 price as a predictable market, and giving the right incentives for everyone to change, if you want, the way we are doing.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Castro. We just have one more question from the chat that I'm going to ask you, and then after, I think we have to wrap up, because now we're a little...
Yeah.
Okay, so this is a question from Margarida Valle, which is, what skills or characteristics do we, young talents, have to help companies achieve their sustainable and responsible goals? What advice would you give us?
Well, the first one is to be challenging. I think the society today needs a lot of people to put questions and to ask why. Even the first thing we say is no. Why it's no? So challenge. I think curiosity, of course, it's very important, and also, if you want, involvement, being involved, and having the sense that even each of us can really make a difference. So you're entering now in professional life very soon, I hope, and what I usually say to people that are coming to working in my teams is, please challenge us. If you don't agree with something, please tell us. Ask us why. And if you are not satisfied with the question, ask again and say, I'm not satisfied, I don't believe it. Please explain again. I think that's the only way that we have to is challenging everything, challenging the right direction, of course, as you understand.
Thank you so much.
Okay,
I think,
thank you for the invitation.
Yeah, thank you. So
And sorry for this
No,
interruption.
sorry for us too. That's how it is when it's all online. It's not always.
Sometimes doesn't work as we expect.
Okay, so I guess we didn't have time for the break right now, but we had like a small break with all the issues earlier. So now I think it's time to actually welcome Mr. Carlos Costapina from Galp. And Mr. Castro, if you can stop sharing your screen.
Yeah,
I can.
I will. I have to leave, so I'm sorry, but I will.
Yeah, that's okay. That's okay. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you.
Bye bye.
Bye bye.
Okay, thank you very much. So I'm Carlos. First of all, thanks for the invitation for this meeting and this I'd say very intimistic conference that we are having. I'm representing Galp here, and I would like also to present my regards not only to Nuno Moreira da Cruz, my dear colleague and former colleague here in Galp quite recently, and also to my colleague from EDP. So sharing our experience and our challenges within Galp regarding sustainability. We have, of course, a different profile since EDP is basically an electricity company, and Galp, our core business is on the oil and gas sector, and we are making the path to transform the company into a real energy company. If you could go directly to slide number 4, please. Just to give you, thank you very much. Just to give you a very, very quick overview. I don't want to go into all that details about the company. So Galp is a publicly listed company with a market cap at this moment around 6 billion. So it's roughly speaking half of the market cap that we had on the period before the COVID crisis, I would say. And this is a trend, unfortunately, very consistent with all the remaining oil companies, and mainly the major oil companies that experienced similar evolution in terms of the market cap value. So Galp is a vertically integrated energy company with more than 150 years. We are present in 11 countries, more than 6,000 employees with more than 51 nationalities within the company. We came from refining and midstream business to the upstream business around 20 years ago. We are now balancing our pure oil portfolio with a natural gas increasing weight in our portfolio, and also making the move from the oil and gas business to the power sector, and as I said, transforming the company in a real energy company. Our legacy market is in Iberia, Portugal, and Spain, with almost 1,500 service stations on the downstream business, and also with a relevant retail market in Africa, mainly in the Portuguese speaking countries. We are managing more than 3,000 suppliers at this moment, but since we consider relevant the close relation and involvement with local partners, I would say that more than 3/4 of our purchases are made locally. So this is roughly speaking, and to give you a very, very general overview of the company, who we are. And now I would move to a quick detail about the four different business units that we have within the company at the next slide. So, can you move the slide, please? Thank you very much. So, the four main business units that we have within the company are the upstream business, so oil and gas exploration and production, the refining and logistics, third one, the commercial unit. And in the commercial unit, we are dealing not only with liquid fuels, but also to the natural gas and power being sold to direct clients. And finally, the renewable and the new business, in which we have an increasing part of business development being made at this moment. These different and these four business units, as you may see, are quite different. In terms of the relevance for the P&L of the company, I'd say that the upstream is now indeed the core business. Around 70% of our EBITDA is coming from the upstream business. But I would say that in this integrated way that we work and that shapes our activity, indeed, we are working to satisfy the customers' energy needs, and also we are working to assure the security of supply in the markets in which we are present. In any case, if we have to look to these different four business units, I would say that the ones that are under the biggest challenging transformation at this moment are indeed the refining and the liquid fuels commercial segment, giving the changes that we are facing in what concerns the mobility paradigms and mainly the electrification of the mobility, of course. If you can change the slide, please. I jump directly to give you a quick overview on the way we are organized internally and what is our internal governance model in terms of sustainability. So I'm the person directly responsible at the executive committee with the sustainability topics. Besides that, I run also other responsibilities within our corporate center of the company, namely the risk management, in a similar way like EDP is organized itself, as my colleague already presented. But on this topic, the main issue that I would like to share with you is to tell you about the relevance of our sustainability committee that we have within the company. Sustainability committee is a specialized committee coming directly from the board of directors, and this sustainability committee is chaired by Miguel Ataíde Marques, that is indeed the dean of Católica University, so very close to you also. And Miguel Ataíde Marques not only chairs the sustainability committee, but also is the vice chairman of the company and indeed the lead independent director of the company. Internally and changing the governance subject to the more value proposition agenda that we have. We can change the slide again, please. Our value proposition is strictly linked with what we call the SDGs, the Sustainable Development Goals. And on this topic, this is not different to what happens with the EDP. On the 17 SDGs, half of them are closely related with the food and society and social dimensions. The remaining 8 SDGs are mainly related with water resources, energy, infrastructure, and cities. And lastly, the final SDG is a more governance SDG related with the different partnerships to structure the way all the interested parties, not only the nations, but also the private sector, engage on these goals. In our case particularly, and in a similar way, like it happened with EDP, I would say that SDG number 7, number 11, 12, and 13 are the ones in which we are most engaged. So being an energy company is not different like we have seen in the previous presentation from my colleague. Now I move to the recognitions. Indeed, I'm finding some relative similar way of this presentation when compared with the previous presentations. So all of us, we like to talk about recognitions, and indeed we are really proud of the independent external recognitions that we have, that also give us a higher responsibility to not frustrate the stakeholders' expectations. This is the current recognitions that we have, but I would say that more important than this is also to, when we look into the past, the way we can see the evolution that we had during the latest decade. And we can see this on the next slide, if you can change again. This is quite I'd say, rewarding to acknowledge the increasing trend of a good external recognition of the company by the independent entities that evaluate our performance. On Europe, we rank #1 in our sector, oil and gas sector, and at the world level, Galp ranks number 3. Indeed, this third place is a second place, since the two first companies are companies that are that belong to the same corporate group. So since there are companies that relate to the same group, we can say that indeed our number 3 at the world level is indeed a second place. But if we look into more detail to this, and since the results for 2020 are not yet disclosed, we are expecting for the disclosure to happen by the end of this month. So the latest results that we have are related to 2019. In 2019, we achieved the best result ever in our experience dealing with these topics. And if we look more attentively into the environmental dimension on the oil and gas sector, indeed, we are recognized as being a leader company. And we are also recognized as being a leader in other more specific dimensions of the evaluation of our performance, like climate strategy, the water risks, the risk and crisis management, and so on. So, as I said, this also gives us, increases significantly our responsibility to not frustrate the stakeholders' expectations on this topic. Now we can move to give, moving from I'd say, this more corporate and institutional presentation of the company to the challenges that we have related to the energy transition and decarbonization. And if you can move again, please. Thanks. So a first conclusion that we can take is that decarbonization indeed is not an option, or on the opposite, is mandatory. So all the companies, all the sectors have to decarbonize. And of course, this is even more demanding on the energy sector. Sometimes we can hear that Well, this decarbonization challenge is more a tsunami for the oil and sector, and is a kind of a wave to be surfed by the pure electricity sector. So I don't totally agree with that, because the challenges that we have on oil and gas related to the mobility paradigms and also to the electrification of the economy are not more demanding than the challenges that the pure electricity sector has related to the discontinuation and decommissioning on the coal-fired plants, or the challenges coming from the decentralized generation. So indeed, these are real challenges affecting not only the pure electricity sector, but also the oil and gas sector. My colleague from NDP talked about the 4D challenges. So I have also some D challenges to share with you. The decarbonization, of course, is one of them. Data and digital is another challenge that is affecting our sector. Demography is also a very big challenge, not only in this sector, but in a more general way. And there are also a fourth D challenge, that in Portuguese we say desigualdade, and desigualdade translates in English into inequality. And why I'm referring this? I'm referring this because when we look to the so-called ESG factors, so environment, social, and governance factors, indeed, the S in the ESG, the social dimension, is becoming a more and more bigger issue to be dealt with within the companies. So the importance of having social indicators in the company, and the way we deal with inequality, and the way we report in an accurate way these social indicators, is becoming more and more mandatory. But of course, when we look to the regulation, the decarbonization and carbon neutrality is a key driver. In Europe, we are very focused on the decarbonization to 2050, but I would say that the most relevant new that we have this year is not coming from Europe and is not related to 2050. In my opinion, is coming from China, when China recently announced that they want to be neutral in 2060. So just 10 years after the European target. And in my opinion, is indeed this commitment from China that is changing the needle on this discussion. But when we saw very recently on the occasion on the IMF annual meetings, the president of European Central Bank saying that we are facing structural damages related to this COVID crisis and economic recession and so on, and these require also structural changes, and that all the money coming from public budgets being channeled to decarbonization and digitalization is quite obvious from me. That is the main challenge and the main trend that all the companies, and namely in the oil and gas, we will have to face on the next decades. So I would say that all the money will be directed to these two main targets: decarbonization and digitalization. And this will be an important driver of increased competitiveness of the companies. Talking about regulation, and if you can change the slide again, please. I will not go into the detail of the different national and international instruments that are trying to frame this discussion. I would say that in this sector, we are mainly dealing with two main instruments. One is the long-term carbon neutrality roadmap to 2050 that establishes, I'd say, the long-term ambitions. But besides that, and in the more short and medium term, also the specific commitments, more than ambitions, we are talking about commitments to 2030. And on this topic, not only the Portuguese climate national plan, but also the Spanish climate national plan are key when we are analyzing and when we are defining the strategy for the coming years. So how we are addressing this topic on the energy transition? I will go into this and please, can you can you share the slide? Yeah, thanks. So about energy transition and the way we are addressing this, I would like to give you two main figures on that discussion. One is related to the Capex allocation that have been decided by our board to make this change. And what was already decided and agreed within the company is that more than 40%, or at a minimum of 40% of our Capex allocation will be dedicated to this. And this means really transformation of our business portfolio. And when we look specifically to the renewable and new business, we have a minimum on an annual basis of 10 to 15% of Capex allocation being dedicated to these new segments of activity, and mainly to the renewables. So this is indeed a very demanding challenge, since at the very same time we are changing the profile and the portfolio of the company. At the very same time, we have to continue to develop the current projects in which we are involved, be it in Brazil, in the Brazilian pre-salt, when we are extracting the oil in our upstream business. And this indeed from this segment of activity that we are generating, as I mentioned, 70% of our EBITDA at this moment. So we are using the profitability and the cash flow from that activity to make the transformation of the company, but also the development of other relevant projects on the upstream, like the ones in Mozambique. That is one of the biggest natural gas projects in the world at this moment. So if you can move the slide again, just to give you an idea about the dimension of the effort that we are making in what concerns to renewables and new business. Now we are, I'd say, a relatively small renewable operator in Iberia at this moment. But when we look to the portfolio of assets that we have just bought, we can really say that indeed we are at this moment now the first player in Iberia in the renewable business, because besides the assets that we have under operation at this moment, we are expecting during the next 3 to 4 years to almost triple the installed capacity that we have in our portfolio. And if we look further to the end of this decade, so to 2030, I'd say that the current value of installed capacity will be multiplied 11 times. So it's a very, very significant growth within this decade that is requiring a huge transformation effort within the company. Now moving to another topic that is on the perfectly on this slide, that is related with green financing. Green financing is good and is important, and stakeholders are expecting the companies to show their performance on green finance, and we are also working on that. But to be honest, more important than green finance are, in our opinion, the green projects that we have, because the green finance will be a consequence of the very green nature of the project. So since we are building a relevant portfolio in the renewable business stream, I'd say that the green finance will be a consequence of that. And we are, of course, deeply committed with that. Now, moving from strategy to action. Next slide. Perfect. So, of course, having a strategy is important, and all of you study that in your classroom. But the strategy is not enough. It's good to have a strategy, but it's better to have an action plan. So on the basis of our strategy, we are also developing our really action plan with specific targets that are driving the way we are managing this company, not only on the climate change challenge, but also in what concerns to the social indicators and the way we deal with people and the purpose that we have dealing with people, but also on what we call the carbon footprint, and also the way we perform the level of safety and security in the company, and the way we deal with our network of suppliers. So I will not go into all the details on the very different topics, but just to give you an idea that when we are internally managing the sustainability strategy, we do it on the basis of an action plan, with targets, with an agenda, with time limit, with owners, in order to have things done in time and in a way that are well perceived as good performance by the external parties that assess and evaluate the way we are managing the company. And finally, and it is the last slide, and then I will be available also for Q&A. The most recent announcement that we made to the market a couple of weeks ago about our commitments in terms of emissions reduction and carbon intensity reduction. We have, by the end of last month, the opportunity to have a decision taken by our board that says two simple things, but very important and very transformational in this company. The first one is to expressly assume and expressly commit to have a company that wants to be carbon neutral in Europe in 2050. And this is a vision totally aligned with European vision on carbon neutrality to 2050. But more important than that, or more important than that ambition, is the commitment that we are taking to 2030. And when we are talking about commitment to 2030, we said a very simple thing. We want to reduce our carbon intensity at least by 15% by 2030. You can say, well, but 15% by 2030 is not enough. You should reduce more. I agree. The point is that the path and the speed of transformation in an industry like that is not reasonable, is not feasible to do it in a different way. And these 15%, I would say, are very well aligned with the way that in general the oil and gas companies, and mainly the major oil and gas company, are also addressing this topic. This is a starting point, but it is a very, very important point in terms of internal transformation of the company. This means really a DNA transformation and a cultural transformation of the company. So It's not easy, but we will deliver it. That's my promise. Thank you very much, and I'm available for Q&A.
Thank you
I
so
have
much.
a question. Thank you for your presentation, Mr. Pina. I was wondering, do you think that it is realistic and feasible that all of the companies that are basically in the oil and refinery sector, do you think they will be able to turn to renewable energy and focus in that area without going bankrupt, at least all or the majority of them?
Well, I think, and more than thinking, I truly believe that this kind of transformation will be inevitable. The companies that do not embark on this transformation will not survive, because we like it or not, there is no alternative to this decarbonization trend. There is no alternative to these changes on the electrification of the economy. There is no alternative to these changes on the mobility paradigms that we have today. Now, relevant things that are under discussion are when the internal combustion engines will be forbidden to enter into the market, when it will happen. And this is under discussion within the European authorities. So when this is put at law and when this is mandatory, there is no way back to this. So there is no alternative. Another relevant aspect that is under discussion today is about imposing the obligation for the companies to acquire CO2 licenses on the business of the liquid fuels, or imposing the obligation to acquire CO2 licenses related to the emissions coming from buildings. So when we put these simple business activities into the European trading scheme, into the ETS model, so this will change dramatically the way the companies are running this kind of business. So I don't see there is an alternative. And of course, and at least is the way we see this internally within the discussions with the different stakeholders and internally at the different corporate bodies of the companies, there is a deep consensus about this transformation to be made. I believe that there is not alternative.
Thank you.
Mr. Costa Pina, I have a question regarding the production of oil and gas and the emission of CO2. Like when we talk about the production of oil and gas, there's always implied the emission of CO2. So I wanted to know, like, which are the technologies that you are going to implement in order to reduce the CO2 emissions?
Well, thank you very much for that question. Indeed, it's very, very important. Let me tell you one thing. When we look to the CO2 emissions, and according to the rules that we comply with about this topic, we have to analyze it from the point of view of the full life cycle under the criteria that is called the well to wheel. So from the production of oil up to the wheel of the vehicle that is on the road. And when we look into this, under this life cycle approach, I'd say then more than 80% of CO2 emissions is coming from the burning of liquid fuels in the vehicles that are on the road. So the major part of the emission is not from the production. A second, this is a minor part indeed. A second relevant segment is coming from refining and logistics. But of course, as I said, more than 80% of the emission is coming from the burning of the fuels within the at the vehicles at the roads. So this means one simple thing, and that's the reason why the European authorities are so focused in changing the mobility paradigm, introducing electric vehicles or vehicles being fueled on the basis of other alternative fuels, for instance. Because this is the first way, or is the most important lever to change the emissions. So then you can ask, so that this means that there is no way for refining industries? Not necessarily, because although we might not need in the future oil to be transformed in liquid fuels for the vehicles that are at the roads, we have a lot of other industry activities that still require oil. And when you think, for instance, on the petrochemical sector or on the chemical sector, for instance, these are kind of industries that still need the use of oil as an input in their activities. So this means that indeed also the refining activity will have to be subject to a transformation process, using the oil not for mobility, but using the oil for alternative uses that do not imply the burning of the oil itself. That is the main, I'd say, the main topic that we have to address on this.
Okay, thank you.
I have a question regarding CCS. You have a lot of research and innovation regarding this, because I know it's like, if you don't have maybe it's hard to start that process from now if you haven't done that before. But have you been working with that, or is that something that's new for your company?
Well, it's a good question. Indeed, we have under our pipeline of innovation projects also CCS projects. The point related to the CCS at this moment, or the main challenge, are related with two things. One of them is the technological uncertainties at this moment. So it's not clear the way we or the companies will address this this topic or the technological solutions to assure the carbon capture and storage. But besides the technological uncertainty that is a real problem at this moment, there is also an economic equation to be solved. That is to say that a CCS project to be profitable would require a level of CO2 price maybe higher than 200 or 300 euro per ton. When you look to the price of CO2 at this moment at the market, CO2 is trading between 20 and 25 euros per ton. So for a CCS project to be economically profitable, it would require a price of CO2 much more higher, 10 times, 15 times higher than current market prices. And this is also, the economic equation is not yet solved at this moment. Of course, you can say, well, but this can be dealt with by putting public money on that and through subsidiation. But indeed, subsidiation is not at this moment on the equation. So, but combining the pure market carbon price with technological improvements that reduces the uncertainty, I think that this could be the way to solve the CCS challenges at this moment.
Thank you. I also have a little follow-up question on that, because I noticed that both EDP and you talked about that you're researching on green hydrogen. And is this the reason for that you're investing more in green hydrogen than other types of hydrogen? Or I don't even know if you do that, but yeah, could you elaborate a little bit on that?
Well, our main focus in terms of business developments and new business are related with renewables, and as I mentioned, could it be the pure power generation? Could it be looking into also wind generation? The so-called green hydrogen is, of course, dependent on the electricity renewable generation that is important to produce the hydrogen. But at this moment, I think that this is mainly also an innovation project that is strictly dependent from also technological developments in order to assess if there is possible to have not only a pilot project, but more than that, a real scaled economic and market project to be developed. And since this is an area of development that is being indicated as a priority by the European authorities and on the basis on the European agenda, of course, all the companies have the duty to look into it, since the link relations and the strict connections that are established between the green hydrogen and the pure renewable solar generation.
Okay, thank you.
There's also like a question in the chat. I would like to read it if you don't mind. It's from Natalia Cantarino, and she wants to know if you think the industry lack of well-defined matrices just has its impact. When you talk about inequality within the indicators, would that be an issue, or is it more the frameworks used to do so?
The question of industry metrics at this moment is also a topic that is under discussion, because also there is not yet totally established an agreement related to the way all the companies will be reporting their performance in a comparable and systematic way. So I would say that we, and when I say we, I'm talking about not only the oil and gas sector, but also the energy sector and in a more general way, also affecting other sectors. There is a huge work in terms of standardization and normalization of criteria to be done in order to assure that the indicators and the metrics that we are reporting in our public communication are directly comparable with the similar reporting that the other companies are also doing. So this is a topic that is under discussion and subject to, I'd say, international agreement on that. And this is particularly relevant when you are talking about the so-called science-based targets that are also dependent from further normalization among the industry. And this is applicable to the pure carbon indicators, and the same happens, of course, to the social indicators, although, in my opinion, in what concerns to the social indicators, is much more easy to get their kind of standardization and normalization across the different sectors. Okay, any further question?
I would have one more, if you don't mind.
Yeah.
About the refinery process, what has already been done in order to make it more green, or what are you currently doing? Is it more the production process that you use renewable energies to produce, or is it something else?
Well, in terms of the refining processes, the change that we are talking about is mainly dependent of the, I'd say, adapt the refineries to receive different kinds of raw materials in order to be able to produce also different kinds of fuels. Namely, there is an important stream of production that is related to the biofuels that could be produced not using oil, of course, and that can be used from other kinds of renewable products, and things like producing biofuel or biogas through the recycling of plastics and whatsoever. So transforming or converting the I'm sorry, I think that my video has stopped for, I didn't understood. I switch on again. So as I said, in terms of the refineries, an important stream of transformation is related to the capacity to have the refineries more able to produce different kinds of fuels based on the use of different feedstock. So the hydrogenation of vegetable oils is also a relevant stream of production to increase the level of production of bioethanol or biodiesel, for instance. But to be honest, in my opinion, this could be a transitory transformation, because if we can or if we believe that in 15 or 20 years from now, all the mobility will be electric, so it doesn't make sense to produce other kinds of bio-liquid fuels. So the best way is also to concentrate all the investments on the electricity stream or different kinds of alternative fuels rather than the liquid ones. But even in this case, as I said, if we believe that also the refineries have a way to go in order to convert themselves to produce relevant inputs to the petrochemical or to the chemical industry, there is a different stream of development that should be considered, and of course will not be difficult to find investors available to put their money in such kind of project. But of course, this will be a different refining industry when compared to the one that we have nowadays.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay.
Is there any more questions? No, I get
okay.
Time, because the time is also up, so that's perfect. So yeah, I just wanted to say thank you so much for a great presentation. I hope you enjoyed it as much as we did. And thank you for all the participants as well for a great conference despite some technical issues. And yeah, I hope everyone enjoyed.
Thank you very much. It was a pleasure to be invited by you and to be with you this afternoon. And I think you might need from myself. Please, you have my contacts, or just ask Nuno Moreira da Cruz to give my contacts, and it will be a pleasure to continue this dialogue. Thank you very much.
Let me just say something. I was not.
No.
Yeah. Because I was not supposed to stay here until the end, but I really wanted to do that because I know I would learn something with you, Carlos. So that was fantastic that I did. I just want to say again what I said at the beginning. I'm really impressed with the passion that you students put on these things. You are doing this on the top of everything you have to do. And the commitment that you do, it's fantastic. This sort of conferences never have more than 25 to 30 people, typical.
Yeah.
But then you have hundreds of people in social media immediately after. We had that experience. For instance, last week, we had a conference with 40 people and we reached 1,500. So this is the amazing thing of social media and the power of social media. So doing this, you managed to put together the two biggest Portuguese companies in terms of energy, and more than the companies is the people that are coming representing the company, like Carlos and Antonio, which they are absolutely fantastic on what they say. So well done, gentlemen. And I mean, the technological, it happens everywhere. I've seen a conference done by Harvard last week that it was much awful. They stopped for 15 minutes without knowing what to do. So it happens. No worries with that.
That's it.
Take care. Keep up the good work. E Carlos, muito obrigado. Abraço.
Obrigado, Nuno. Obrigado.
Obrigado.
Thank you very
so
much.
much. Goodbye.
So much.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.